On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, discussing one D-back strength that they had last season that we have not seen enough this year, and playing a little game of who's hot, who's not, as we enter the next series against the Seattle Mariners.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You listen to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, MillardThomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we will be discussing why the D-backs need to create more chaos on the bases, a strength last year that I think we just haven't seen enough in 2024. And then we'll play a little game of who's hot, who's not, as we enter the next series against the Seattle Mariners. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And I just wanted to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. Our goal is to hit 2,000 subs by the All-Star break. So please hit subscribe to Locked on D-backs on YouTube. But let's get into the podcast now. And let's talk about a certain D-back strength from last season that we have not seen enough this year, because last year, one of the strengths of this D-backs team was base running, right? Creating chaos and havoc on the bases. You had your Perdomos and your Carrolls and the Thomases and the McCarthys, the speedsters on the team, right? But even outside of those players, guys like a Christian Walker were super critical to what the D-backs were doing last year. And even the Lourdes Gurriel and the Ketel Martes, just smart base running by this D-backs team up and down last year. Smart base running and aggressive base running really helped this D-backs team thrive last year. We know Jake McCarthy. We know Corbin Carroll, Domo Thomas. Those guys are the speedsters. But the Walker, 11 stolen bases. The Ketel Marte, 8 stolen bases. Gabriel Moreno's not slow. Lourdes Gurriel moves pretty good for his size as well. Like, this D-backs team last year created so much chaos on the bases. They put pressure on these opposing pitchers. How many times last year did we see guys step off the mound and throw over to first base when there's a Corbin Carroll or really any of the D-back speedsters over there, right? How many times did we see men be on second and you had pitchers constantly looking over their shoulder and turning to see what was going on behind them, because the D-backs were that aggressive last year? And so far this season, I don't think we've seen that aggression from the D-backs. Now, at times, I think the D-backs have been overly aggressive. I will say the D-backs, from a base running perspective this year compared to last year, I think they've been reckless at times on the bases, and they just haven't taken high IQ opportunities. A lot of times when they go, I'm like, that wasn't a smart play. You shouldn't have run there. Or they just get picked off because they're not paying attention. Like, or they get doubled up. Like, how many times have we seen the D-backs get doubled up on the bases this year? Like, there has been some really, really gross mistakes at times by D-backs base runners this year. And last year, it was such a strength by this D-backs team. And this year, it's been all right. Corbin Carroll has 8 stolen bases. He's been running, of course, but the rest of the team really not getting it done. So that's one area, maybe the biggest area right now. Of course, late game offense has been a conversation in the bullpen late, but a lot of that late game offense, a lot of those problems can probably be solved if the D-backs go back to the philosophy and get back to the mindset that they had last year when they were creating so much chaos on the bases. And it's not like they're not getting opportunities. The D-backs are currently 4th in the National League in OBP. They know how to get on base. They are the highest scoring team in the National League. Like, this team knows how to get on base, but it just feels like they're not taking advantage or they're not being smart when they do get on base. 4th worst stolen base percentage in the National League, one less out on base than the league average, 2nd in pickoffs. Like, the numbers for the D-backs on the bases this year just aren't pretty. And again, part of the reason why the D-backs haven't been as good on the bases this year is because of some of the injuries that they are dealing with right now, right? That's fair to say. The team speed should improve going forward when you get a guy like Alec Thomas, who is starting to run right now during his rehab assignments. Once he gets back, he's pretty good. Thomas quietly, when you look at the last couple of years, he's been, I think, in the top 25 to top 30 in sprint speed in Major League Baseball. He's pretty quick. Perdomo, he was just a smart base runner last year. Perdomo's problem throughout his time in the majors was maybe he was not the smartest base runner. Sometimes in the minor leagues, he'd be overly aggressive and he'll get you maybe 18 stolen bases in a year, but also get thrown out like 8 to 9 times. Last year, Perdomo, 16 stolen bases, very smart, very aggressive. And so once this team starts to get healthier and you have the full complement, we'll see if Jake McCarthy stays on the major league level. But if you did have a Carroll, a Jake, a Perdomo, a Blaze, a Thomas all together with the Gabriels, the Martes, and the Christian Walkers, like, yeah, your team speed will be raised and you can get back to hopefully being aggressive on the bases. But again, with the aggression, you also need to be smart on the bases. Right now, Corbin Carroll is the only D-backs player with more than 2 stolen bases on this team. I want to see Jake McCarthy run more. He's been pretty solid this year. He's batting over 300 right now, getting on base a pretty decent rate. Let's see Jake McCarthy get a little bit more aggressive on the bases. If you have a name like Blaze Alexander, you have to be quick. And so maybe getting Blaze Alexander in some better run scoring or in some better run stealing opportunities. He shouldn't take off every time, but if you got a pitcher on the mound with a slow windup, or if you got a catcher with a not very strong arm, let's send Blaze Alexander in those opportunities. And then I want to see just more extra base taken, taking those round turns around first, second, third base, acting like you're going to take that extra base. That's what I want to see more of from the Walkers, the Gurriels, the Morenos, the Martes. Like, just get smarter, more aggressive, and keep that chin up. When you're on first and there's a single to right field, think about going first or third. I don't think we've seen enough of that from the D-backs this year. The extra base taken percentage for the D-backs, it looks fine compared to what it was last year. It's pretty much around the same rate. But when you watch the team, it just doesn't feel like this team is as aggressive and as smart on the base pass as they were last year. So that's the big thing. Or, again, one of the few big things, right? Again, late game offense, bullpen, we all want that to be fixed. But the strength of this D-backs team last year was chaos, was creating havoc, and they have not done that enough this season. So to me, that's one of the biggest differences from last year's team to this year's team. And against the Seattle Mariners, this D-backs team might have a chance to create some chaos on the bases. Cal Raleigh is pretty much average in all the catching defensive metrics if you go on StatCast. So could be an opportunity for the D-backs to finally get going and create some more pressure on the bases. Now I want to talk about who's hot, who's not, as the D-backs enter the next series against the Seattle Mariners. Want to make mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Moms are a gift, so give her the best gift this Mother's Day. Get gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash. Select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials and more, delivered right to her door. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place. Get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code Locked On MLB. That's code Locked On MLB. Order using DoorDash today for 15% off on orders of $15 or more. DoorDash, terms apply. All right, all right, all right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for the personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. But now let's play a little game of who's hot, who's not, as the D-backs enter their next series against the Seattle Mariners. I usually like to do this topic, about once a month, maybe twice a month, typically on that Thursday off day before your next series. I think it's a fun Friday podcast, so you could get a little look as we enter the weekend of who's the best D-backs players right now and who is in a little bit of a slump. I like to look at the last 15 days. And so I got 4 players who I think are hot and 4 players, I guess, 4.5 players kind of who I think is cold. But first, we'll start positive and we'll start with who's hot. The first guy I want to discuss is Ketel Marte, who has been on fire his last 13 games. He is 18 for 52. He's got 5 RBIs. He's got 5 doubles, 7 RBIs, a couple of home runs, and he's just been really good as a table setter at the top of the lineup. 346 average, 948 OPS over his last 13 games, 5 walks, 8 strikeouts. Ketel Marte, what he's been able to do as a table setter at the top of the lineup for the D-backs has been absolutely phenomenal this year. He has been able to get rocket shots off the bat in many first innings this year. One of the main reasons why the D-backs have been so good at scoring in the first inning this season is because Ketel Marte likes to start the game with a lot of singles, or he starts the game with a lot of doubles. Ketel Marte is having himself a fantastic season, and last year was year 1 of the bounce back after an atrocious 2022. This year, I think 2019 MVP Ketel Marte is back. Last year was year 1 of the bounce back. This year, year 2 is the breakout, and we've seen Ketel Marte break out before. 2019, go check the numbers. 4th in MVP voting that season. I had a prediction earlier this year that I believe Ketel Marte can finish as a finalist for the batting title. He's currently batting, what's his batting average right now? It's like 344, I want to say. Ketel Marte's current batting average is 320, excuse me. So he's definitely going to be in the mix for leading the NL in batting. Ketel Marte is that good of a hitter. Back in 2021, only 90 games, but hit 318 for his career. He's a 280 hitter. So Marte, he's been hot the last couple weeks, needs to keep it going against the Seattle Mariners. 2 areas that he has not been good in this season, though, needs to be better with the runners in scoring position. The slash line is phenomenal for Ketel Marte, but when it's runners in scoring position below 600 OPS, and just like the rest of the team, he needs to get better in late game situations. When the game is late and close, which once again, it means the game is within 1 run, 7th inning or later, Ketel Marte in those situations batting below 200, 188 average. So when it's a 1-run game, 7th inning or later, Ketel Marte only batting 188 this season. So needs to get better in clutch situations, but absolutely phenomenal start to the season and has been on an absolute tear the last 2 weeks. The next guy I want to discuss is Joc Pederson. If you look at his last 11 games, 8 for his last 27, a 296 average, a 1062 OPS, 2 home runs, 5 walks to 5 strikeouts. Joc Pederson has been so important for the D-backs in the middle of that lineup. He has, of course, crushed right-handed pitching, which is what he was brought in to do. But even in his limited sample size against the lefties, Joc Pederson has also been good in that area. We want to see a little bit more power from Joc, which he has been displaying more recently. He has the 2 home runs in the last couple weeks. Want to see more of that because Joc this year has been really elite at just getting on base. He's got a 468 OBP, 11 walks, just 5 strikeouts. Like Jock Peterson's plate discipline has been supreme this season. And last year, I think plate discipline was a strength for this D-backs team. They do not strike out a ton, and they do good. They do a good job of drawing walks. Jock Peterson, I think, has fit in perfectly from a plate discipline philosophy. I think he fits right in this lineup, and I absolutely love Jock Peterson. Quick fan favorite. I think once we get to the postseason, his stock is only going to go up another level, especially if we play the Dodgers or the Giants in the postseason. Seeing Jock Peterson crush his former teams, he's going to go crazy in a D-backs uniform. Very excited for Jock Peterson the rest of the season. He's been balling out the last couple weeks, and he just needs to add more pop into that swing because we just need a little bit more over the fence power from Jock Peterson. But great start to the season and really good the last 2 weeks. The next guy, Randall Grichuk, another offseason pickup. He's starting to get going after starting the season a little bit slow, coming off, surgery and injury. Over his last 9 games, he's picking it up. He is 7 for his last 23, 4 doubles, 2 walks to 3 strikeouts. He's got a 304 average, 863 OPS. And we know Randall Grichuk is one of the few guys on this team that is actually really good in run scoring situations and late and close game situations. Grichuk is absolutely clutch. We saw him not that long ago win a game for the D-backs. I think he's been an underrated piece to this D-backs team this season. And I think as the season goes on, his value is only going to raise. He's been a quality bat in the lineup at the plate. Defensively, can glove it a little bit as well. Has been really good against lefties. Still probably want to play him as just a platoon guy. Numbers haven't been great this season against righties, but what he can do against lefties, with what Jock can do against righties, I think you will take it. So Grichuk, he's been hot the last 2 weeks, and I'm glad he's starting to heat up after a slow start to the season. Then the final guy I want to discuss here as a guy who's kind of hot right now that I actually want to see a lot more of, Justin Martinez. It would be really cool to see more of Justin Martinez. So far this season, he has not given up an earned run. Has he walked a couple guys? Yeah, but he has not given up a hit either. And Justin Martinez last year averaged over 100 miles per hour on his fastball. This year, he's taken a little bit off, only averaging 99.7 miles per hour on his fastball. But you'll take it because he's not throwing it as much. Last year, he threw it 60% of the time. This year, it's only about 41%. He's throwing the slider more. He's throwing the split finger more. He's got more of an array of pitches now. He's more, I don't know what word I want to say. He's got more variety. I want to really think of a big, complicated word, but I couldn't get it out quick enough from my head to my mouth. So we'll just stick with he has a larger palette of pitches now. We'll say that. He's not as fastball dependent as he used to be. So Justin Martinez is someone that I absolutely want to see more of in this D-backs uniform as a guy that can dial it up to 103, 104. He can be a game changer in the back end of the bullpen. And we know the bullpen has not exactly been a strength of this D-backs team so far this season. So definitely want to see more of Justin Martinez going forward. But next, we'll talk about the players that maybe we need to see less of in this next series against the Seattle Mariners. And if you're going to place a little wager down on the D-backs to beat the Mariners in the next series, then you need to go to FanDuel Sportsbook because it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball season is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. My favorite thing to do on the FanDuel app is the same game parlay. Whenever the D-backs are playing, I take D-backs money line, which if you look at their record has hit less than it has hit this season. So that doesn't make me feel great, but still D-backs money line, take the Marte over on total bases. Now that one does hit a good amount. And then this is the leg of the parlay that never hits, but because the value is just getting more juice as the season goes on, I'm just going to keep throwing it into my parlay. Give me Corbin Carroll RBI for my third leg. He's been struggling, but because he's been struggling, they just keep juicing it day by day. And so if when those 3 legs hit, I get the biggest smile on my face and I go blow it on some drinks at the club. And if you want money to blow on drinks at the club, what are you waiting for? Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Now let's talk about who's not hot, who's in a little bit of a slump for the D-backs. I'm going to talk about 2 guys just off the bat, the obvious answers. Eugenio Suarez and Corbin Carroll. I'm not even really counting them in this exercise because they kind of been slumping all season. Eugenio Suarez did have a hot start, but it's been a pretty long stretch of him not playing good baseball right now. But for Corbin Carroll, we know he's been bad all season, but if you actually look at the last 2 weeks for Corbin Carroll, it's actually been dreadful. The only players on this D-backs team that have a worse OPS than Corbin Carroll over the last 15 days are Jace Peterson, who has, 0 hits over his last 15 days. He has 6 games played, 12 at bats, 0 hits. So that's one guy Corbin Carroll has been better than the last 15 days. The other guy, Tucker Barnhart, who has 2 hits over his last 5 games. So those are the only players worse than Corbin Carroll in terms of batting average and OPS over the last 2 weeks. It is rock bottom for Corbin Carroll right now offensively at the plate. He's been dropped in the lineup. He can't hit anything right now. It's either a ground ball or it's a pop-up or it's a strikeout. And he doesn't even strike out a ton. He's still a guy that walks as much as he strikes out. That's like the one saving grace from him. He still has good plate discipline. He still knows what's a strike. The bat just never makes contact with it anymore. Or if it does, it's just weak, soft contact, not the hard contact that we saw last year from a Corbin Carroll. So I'm praying going back home to Seattle, Washington guy, Corbin Carroll, this could be the series where he hopefully wakes up. Maybe he sees his mom in the stands. Maybe he's got family out there. I don't know. But Corbin Carroll, I'm praying this could be the series where he gets going. Christian Walker is a guy who has been pretty good this season, but if you look at his last 2 weeks, not as good. Last 13 games for Christian Walker, 222 average, 668 OPS. He is 10 for his last 45 with just 1 home run. Now, I do like 10 walks to 10 strikeouts, but need more of the slugging from Christian Walker. And of course, the one area that he always struggles in, runners in scoring position, need more of that from our cleanup hitter, first baseman. He's supposed to be a middle of the order killer. And at times he is, but it feels like there's a lot of times where there's no one on base, right? Or maybe he is scoring someone from first, but want to see more guys score from second and third with 2 outs with Christian Walker up at the plate. He's done it a little bit recently, but consistency is the key to the game. And so need more consistency from Christian Walker in the biggest moments of a ball game. He's, of course, a guy that has been great in those late game clutch situations this year, just like the rest of the team. Joe Mantiply. Some people call him Joe Multiply because of what he can do to the scoreboard. Mantiply has not been good for the D-backs last season, and he has not been good for the D-backs this season. And he's one of those guys where I'm like, now that Andrew Southrank is up on the major league roster, I'm kind of like, it's either Mantiply or Kyle Nelson that needs to go. And right now, Mantiply is the one pitching. Kyle Nelson is hurt. But that doesn't mean either one of them can't go at any moment. Mantiply right now, 3.2 innings pitched, 3 earned runs over his last, or 3 earned runs over his last 3.2 innings pitched. That's probably the easiest way for me to say it. That's the last 15 days for Joe Mantiply. Just not good, guys. Just not good. He had just given up too many earned runs. He's given up too many hits, like 6 hits, 3 earned runs over your last 3.2 innings pitched with 2 walks. Just absolutely awful. A 353 average allowed, a 2.18 whip. Like, Mantiply has come in and has multiplied the score board for the other team. He was someone that was an all-star just a couple years ago, really important for that D-back staff. But now I think Mantiply is probably over the hill and it's probably cooked. And I would rather just roll with one lefty and Andrew Salfrank and just get rid of Kyle Nelson and Joe Mantiply because they just haven't been good enough the last couple years. Another guy that's been struggling, who has been really good for the D-backs in the past, Ryan Thompson. He's in a little bit of a slump right now. Over his last 3.2 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 5 hits, 1 walk. He's someone that's really important to this D-backs team as well. He's kind of the go-to 7th inning guy. It goes Sewald, Ginkel, and then Ryan Thompson, the third most important member of the bullpen. He just hasn't been as effective recently, and maybe he's feeling the pressure of the rest of the bullpen sucking. So Ryan Thompson's like, if I'm not good tonight, I don't know who's going to be good from this D-backs bullpen. So maybe he's feeling a little bit of that. I'm hoping it gets better for Ryan Thompson once Paul Sewald gets back. I'm hoping that's the case with everyone once everyone has a more defined role and gets more in a role that they're comfortable with, especially the roles that they were doing last season. So Ryan Thompson is another guy that can hopefully turn it around in the near future. And the final guy I want to discuss is Kevin Ginkel, who I absolutely love. Still think he's filthy, but he's been struggling a little bit recently too. Over his last 4 innings, 2 earned runs, 4 hits allowed, and just hasn't been as effective as I would want this season. He's given up too many hits at times. He's given up way too much traffic on the bases at times as well. And there's been times he just hasn't pitched the D-backs out of jams like we've needed him to this year. So Ginkel, he is the go-to setup man. He's been doing the quasi closer role all year because of Paul Sewald's injury, but Sewald will be back soon. Ginkel will go back to the sub man. I'm hoping everyone's roles will be more defined and everyone will be better situated and more comfortable in the roles that they're used to. So we can only hope that things get better once this team starts to get healthy, because guys like Ginkel and the Thompsons, they were the dudes that we were relying on entering the season. Those were the dudes that we penciled in to be good for the D-backs. And if those guys are not good for the D-backs, then I don't know who you can trust in that D-backs bullpen. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back next week for more Diamondbacks news, coverage, and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.